Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session of Dr. Spotfire. My name's Neil Kanungo. I'll be your host. And today we're going to be talking about how to Excel with Spotfire, Microsoft Excel spreadsheet tips for using Spotfire, going over different parallels. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so first off, our motto with Dr. Spotfire is learning is not driven by answers, but by questions. All right, so for today's agenda, these are the topics I plan to go over today. These are kind of high level. This is a session designed for beginners, and it is on different parallels that I found when, going from Excel to Spotfire. I used to be a big Excel and VBA jockey, and I was building lots of applications and tools in Excel before discovering Spotfire, which really sped up my development time and increased the scalability and sophistication of the work I was able to do. So these are some of the topics that I felt were useful in bridging that gap. So I'll be going over that today. To start, data format. What data format? So typical spreadsheet might look like this. You have information all over the spreadsheet. And this makes sense when you're using a spreadsheet because you are using the spreadsheet as both your data storage as well as your user interface and your consumption layer. It's typical to have like tables all over the place, formatting and things all over the place. But as you're coming into Spotfire or any other, visualization platform, you're not going to be using your data layer as your visualization layer. And so one of the key things we're going to be talking about is kind of separating those two things. You're going to be thinking about your data more consciously as a component, and then you're going to be thinking about what you're trying to show as another component. Just an example of what your data tables should like. So this is sometimes called tidy tables. So here I have honey production. This is just a sample data set. And you'll see I have these columns here, and it's one table. And I have, very clearly the right data types, the right values, all in the columns. Now, you might hear a column called a dimension, a column, a field, a variable, all the same thing. There's really no difference in terms of a data table. You also might hear a row called like a measure, a row, a record, an observation. So I put those down here, all the same thing. Essentially, what you have in the scientific kind of explanation is you have a bunch of variables and you have a bunch of measurements of those variables. So this is a measurement for California, 1998, and what the honey production was, what the colonies were, what the yield was, what the production. This is Colorado in 1998. And so the way the data has been oriented this way, why this is important, and one of the big reasons I imagine you're coming from Excel to something like Spotfire is you're looking for an easier way to consume your data, but you're also looking for a better way to scale your data. Now, by building we're going to talk about this more in a little bit, but for now, I'll say when you build your data in this tidy way, it allows you to just keep adding rows. So when more honey production is recorded tomorrow, I just add another row. When it's recorded next year, I just add another row. And what that allows is the visualizations to know exactly what it's pointing to. And even your algorithms, and if you're doing any data science or statistics, it's all going to use the same data table. And so this scales, it continues to scale down. Now, the other thing about Excel is that you're limited to about 1 million rows on the spreadsheet. There's not really a limit with Spotfire, at least not one that I've really hit. There's different ways to scale Spotfire if you are using like petabytes of data, but even with terabytes of data and gigabytes of data, you can just keep kind of scaling Spotfire. So this allows you now to use more data, use more data, and two, to scale your data every day without having to make any changes. It all just flows right into your visualization. So let me go now to a little bit of a demonstration with Spotfire. And all right, so I'm going to browse a local file. Let me see, I got some go-to stuff here. So I have this honey production table or spreadsheet, and let me actually go ahead and open this in Excel just so you can see it. All right, so this is my honey production table. It's already clean in Spotfire. I said tidy data earlier. It's also sometimes called clean data sets, where it's formatted and structured the right way. I'm just going to bring this in to Spotfire. So you'll first see, this is the CSV file, and this is the different data types. Integers are whole values, so strings are like text. Reals are numeric values that have decimals. Currency is basically the same thing as real, but it's going to format it differently. You got date variables, time variables, Boolean, which is true, false, date, time, things like that. Okay, those are the basic data types. I'm just going to hit OK and bring this in. And so now it's bringing in this honey production data. I'm going to hit OK. And here we are. Okay, so we got a blank canvas. Now, if I go in this bottom left, this is going to be the data canvas. So I said this data table is already clean, but if it was all kind of jumbled up and I wanted to clean it myself in Spotfire, I could do that here by adding transformation. So there's different, I'm not going to go through all the different transformations, but the point is that there's different functions you can do to change the structure and clean up the data. And the nice thing about that is that you don't have to make any changes to your source data. So let's say you're getting a spreadsheet from your boss and you don't want to manually change the structure of that spreadsheet every day just to get it into Spotfire. You can keep it in the format it's in, and then you can just then you put the transformations into your Spotfire layer, into your DXP, which is this analysis. And what that means is every time Spotfire reaches out to the data source, it's going to take in whatever structure it is stored in that spreadsheet or wherever you have it, and it's going to transform into a clean form. So you don't have to do that over and over. You're basically building a pipeline, a flow right there. So you'll see this is a little bit of a preview of the data that we brought in. You can see any information. So I can click on this node. This is where it's coming from. This is the data table that it's going out to. So this is your source. This is what's being exposed to your Spotfire visualizations, and everything in between is just your workflow. Now, when you're here, you can do one just quick tip. I'm not going to do a lot of this right now, but one thing I would recommend is taking a little bit of time and cleaning up your column names to the things that you want them to be, because this is going to flow downstream into your whole Spotfire analysis. So when you're making visualizations, you don't want to like change the names on every visualization manually. It's better just do it right here. You don't have to do it necessarily in the beginning, but you want to do it at this layer, at the data canvas layer, and that will make all the names clean on the rest of your analysis. And just the way this works, it is a little bit of an expression. We'll talk about these later. But you can do things like, so whatever columns I want to rename, let's say I was bringing all of these in. I have different functions like substitute or convert to uppercase, things like that. So if I did substitute, this %C is the name of the column. It's just a placeholder. And then you have this is a little example. So if I want to substitute and I wanted to change, let's say I have yield per colony and a price per pound. I want to replace anything that said per in there, and I want to replace it with space per space. And what this is going to do is actually put that space in wherever it's all per, right? So that's just like kind of a quick example of how that works. You can also, I'm just going to point out, when you're doing this, you can also you can change the format of the data as well. So you can do change data type, insert after here. So you can change the data type to something else. But like, let's say, for instance, we had this price per pound, which is in a real. I'm going to change this to a currency. And then I want to format this so that it has a currency. I want 2 decimal places. So I'm formatting it so it has a little $sign. I'm going to hit OK. And you'll see that $sign in there now. I'm going to hit OK. And so now this is a currency data type, and that's going to show up in all my charts too. So it's good to just kind of do a little bit of house cleaning here if you want. And again, remember, the next time you bring in the data, it's going to automatically do these transforms. So you only have to do this once. You never have to do it again. Once you really reload the data, it'll just keep reperforming it. Now, wanted to talk a little bit about this sheet before moving on. So you do have this stuff in different areas, in different places. A mistake you can make is trying to import this whole spreadsheet into Spotfire. So like as an example, actually, I don't know if I have this saved. What this is going to do is try to read this as one big table. So you really do want to bring this in as like, you do want your source to have these as different tables. So I would want this to be on its own sheet. I would maybe want this table to be on its own sheet. So that is something that you're gonna have to do on your data source side. A little tip, if you just need to bring something in quickly, I'm gonna hit Control C and copy this on my clipboard. You can just come into Spotfire and you can I'm gonna hit Control V, and it's going to paste that data right in and create its own data table. Now, with these tables, now here's where we get into like some of the areas that people, I think, start to struggle. So I'm gonna bring a table visualization. So the first thing is probably, I'm used to seeing all my data all together in Excel. I'm used to seeing spreadsheet. I wanna see all this. Okay, there's this nice little preview. This has some rows. I wanna see everything, right? So I can go, and you saw I just went to this visualization flyout. Here's some different charts. I have a custom visualization we're working on here. That's what the first three are, but you'll see these other charts all built into yours. So I added a table visualization. You'll also see a column flyout. Here's where you can edit different settings of the columns. You can get an overview of the data that's in the column. You can change the data type and the formatting. And you also get these AI recommendations. If you click the light bulb, and it shows you what's related to the variable that you're selecting, and kind of suggests visualizations for you. Here it's seen the states, and it's actually suggested mapping this all out. So you can actually click these and just add them right to your visualization that way. But let's talk a little bit more about the spreadsheet format and tables. Now, the biggest thing I think people struggle with when they come to Spotfire or any BI tool is they want to like start editing these values, and just like an Excel spreadsheet. And remember, the way that these tools work, these visualizations tools work, is that they're expecting to receive new rows of data. And so changing the value of one cell, you can go and replace a certain value, but it's really looking for a rule that it can apply. Like, how does it know if here I have, let's say, 69 cents. And if I change that, it might be trying to understand, do I change all 69 cents? Do I change this 69 cents? And so the way that it typically works with these tools is the changes that you make, it's going to apply to the whole column. It's going to apply to other conditions. It's going to try to scale that to other rows that are coming in. So I think this is one of the areas where people get a little hung up on. And so, if you wanted to replace a value, let's say I don't know, let's looking at state here. When to replace a value, you can go down here to unique. You can say this is Alabama. You can right click and you can replace it with, I don't know, Alabama. And that's how it will replace it for all instances of Alabama. The other way, if you're going to be doing calculations and stuff, you're actually going to be doing things like data in a calculated column. And that's going to create a new column that's going to apply to the data in a certain row, typically. So if I wanted to see price per pound times the total production, let's say I want to do that. Let me do tools, let me go data, add calculated column. And let's say the total production, and I want to multiply that by the price per pound. And let's say, I don't know, total revenue. And I'm going to hit OK. So this is an expression. So you'll see that this took this price per pound and it multiplied it by total production, and it came up with this value, but it did it all the way down. So you need to think about how that's going to work all the way down. Now, if you wanted to work on just certain states or just certain categories, there's certain things called over functions, but they're outside the scope of what we're going to talk about today. I think it might be a little overwhelming to talk about that. Just want to talk about the basic structure here. All right. Okay. So let's talk just quick terminology on tidy tables. This is a little bit of the textbook boring stuff, but I think it's useful as you start learning to think about things this way. So all data is broken up into numerical or categorical data. Numericals and numbers. Basically, you can think about numerical as numbers, like in this honey production data set. These are all the numbers. And categorical is basically groupings: vanilla, strawberry, raspberry. It can be eye color, green, blue, brown. It can be things like a rating or a state. They're categories. Okay. Now that can further be subdivided. So numerical, you have discrete values like colonies, bee colonies. There's no fraction of a bee colony. It's either a colony or it's not. In this data, years and time can kind of be considered hybrid, but years here are going to be whole years. Stocks are whole stocks. There's no partial stocks. Now, continuous is non-discrete. You have an infinite spectrum. You can have the percent yield. You can have as many decimal points as you'd like. The production per pound, you could have a fraction of a pound of production, right? Then with categorical, you have nominals. These are unordered things like states like Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma, New York. There's no order to them at all. But then there are ordered categories like good, good, poor, acceptable, very poor, very good, things like that. My slide's a little jumbled there, but you get the idea. A rating is a category that has an order to it. Next, just really quick, I want to talk about aggregations. So this is going to be important with charts. If you have numerical values, you can aggregate them. I can take all the colonies for 1998 and I can do an average. What's the average of it? I can get one value. I can aggregate all this granular detail into one value. I can sum it all up. What's the sum of all the colonies? So that's how you do an aggregation. Now, one thing I see is people try to go the other way. If you have a data set that is only giving you the average of the colonies, the average number of colonies in 1998, and that's one row of data, you can't go backwards and say, what's the number of colonies per each state? You can't create granular data from your data set, but you can roll up data. You can create aggregated data from your data set. And certain charts do this. Which is why I'm pointing this out early. Now, aggregations with categorical, there is no average of the state. There's no average US state, but you can do some aggregations like first. What's the first category in this column or in the data set? The first one is Alabama. Or you can do something like concatenate, which will just concatenate them all together, join them all together. All right, so let's go to chart configuration. Now, in chart configuration in Excel, you're used to probably grabbing a couple columns and then hitting the chart button and it creates this type of chart for you. What it's doing is saying, okay, what are your legend entries? You have like a series and you have a category here. So this is just a bar chart of the number of units that I grabbed from each of these items, right? Now, with Spotfire, you're going to do this kind of similarly, but some differences. You'll see this gear icon. You can also right-click on a visualization and go to visualization properties, and you'll get a little window like this where you can put in where you're going to select the column property. So let's just go ahead and jump into this. Let me go into my chart creation demo. Let's say I'm going to create a scatter plot. Let's start with a scatter plot. Okay, I clicked scatter plot. It automatically looked at the data and found the strongest relationship between two variables that were numerical, the number of colonies and the total production. And it automatically did this, and it did this state. It colored it by the state. Now let's say I don't want to color it by state. This little drop down, this is my column selector. So all these little drop downs, they're called column selectors. This column selector, let's say I want it by year. I can change this by year. We can see that the minimum is 1998, the maximum is 2012. There's a lot more down here in 2012. Let's say I don't want any of these at all. I'm going to remove them. Now it's all just one color. Okay, so that is another dimension that I've added to formatting the chart. You see shape by, I could do shape by state, things like that. I think that's a little bit hard to read, but point is you got these options here. You also see these axes column selectors, and you can go ahead, you can change this to, let's say, stocks, right? So now this is the number of stocks. If I want to change this to the price per pound, that's the price per pound. So that's pretty simple as far as configuring, but you get more details if you go into this gear icon and go to properties, or if you right click and you go to properties. Now here you have your x-axis, and this is the number of colonies I've selected. I could change what I just changed. I could change here. Same thing for y-axis. Okay. Now let's just go ahead and jump to a different type of chart, and let's talk about a bar chart here. So a bar chart's going to be a little bit different because a bar chart requires an aggregation. So let's say I want yield per colony, and I have it by state here. I'm going to blow this up too. So I use this little arrow to blow it up. Now let's see. So a bar chart is showing, it's going to take a category. Here we have all of our different states, and then you want a numerical value. And it wants, you can show the sum, like the total of the colonies per state, the average of the colonies per state, things like that, right? So the average, I have the average here, the sum here. There's, I'm not showing each individual granular row. I'm showing, again, an aggregation where I'm bringing it all together. And so you see these aggregations. There's all kinds of aggregations here available to you. Now, let's talk about markings. So next you're probably thinking, I want to create some interaction. How do I do that? All right, so if I select, let's say, Alabama, okay? I selected Alabama here. You see that it's marking these rows in my data set. These are highlighted. What this is doing is basically, you can think of all of these rows of data are inside this bar. They're all in this bar. This bar is mapped to every row that is Alabama. Because this is our, let's go ahead and let me show a little bit better. This is our Alabama. So anything that has Alabama in this column is there. Now, let's say I did, this was our year, and I selected 1999, okay? Now, what this is selecting is not Alabama, but anything that has 1999 in the year. And you'll see that it's also selecting the individual points here. So these are, again, mapped to these individual rows. So if I select, let's say, one row here, you can see that there. That's one row of data. It's mapped to this whole group, but it's one row of data, okay? Now, the way you control this, the quick way is, let me put this back on state. So if you want to create a drill down, you can right click and create a details visualization. And this will drill down on, let's say, just do a line chart. If I select Alabama, let's see, it's line chart. I want this to be year, and I select Alabama. That's Alabama's yield per year. This is Kansas. This is Missouri, okay? So that is a drill down. And the way that is working is through what's called a marking. So it created a marking too, when I said create details visualization, and it's limiting the data using the default marking. So when I first created this dashboard, my default marking was here. It was just called marking. And that's, you can think of it as like a paintbrush. So whatever you mark with one paintbrush is going down to others. So this data is limited by the first marking, and this visualization is using this marking. So the gray marking there is being used, and then this is going to a line chart. It's being limited by that. If I turn this off, it's going to show all the data. It's not going to do anything different. Now it's just showing everything. But if I limit it, now it's only going to wait for whatever I've selected in this type of marking. And you can see that if I have nothing selected, that this is empty. You can do things like change this to show all data, and then it'll show everything. And then when you select something, it'll just change to whatever you have selected. So you have different options there. That's about as far as I'm going to go for that right now. Also just going to point out filters, and filters apply to the whole data table. So they're going to apply to like everything on the page. So I can change number of colonies. I can change like the year to 2007, you'll see now that everything is 2007 or later. So that's how filters are, and that's from this filter flyout. All right, moving on. One key area I see people getting stuck is on pivoting. But on pivoting, this is an area I see people get stuck on. And with pivoting, it is kind of a little bit of a paradigm shift on how you think about your data. Now, the way I like to describe it is with this weight loss example. Let's say we got 4 people, they're in an office and they're doing a weight loss competition. This is what they weighed at the end of each month. So you might see something like this in Excel, and this is very easy to read. I can see what everyone's weight in January was. I can see what Sam's weight was over time. It's very easy to read this. But the problem is, what happens when I need August or September? I got to add new columns. And if you remember in Spotfire, when we were using column selectors and we were looking at the clean data set, adding a new column is going to change your visualizations. If you want all of your data to be in one column, I want to be able to say, I just want to plot month here for the weight loss competition. I just want month in here. I don't want August, September, July, January, whatever. I don't want a different column for each month. That's not going to scale as new data comes in. So the way you might want to arrange this actually is something called unpivoting, and Spotfire will do unpivot in the data canvas that we showed earlier with transformations. For sake of time, I'm not going to show those steps, but know it's in the data canvas. So this is an unpivoted structure, and I've made this wide structure into a tall structure. I made a column for month, I made a column for name, and I made a column for weight. Now, this is really hard for a human to read because I got to kind of look up everything, and it could be all over the place. I see all Megan's is together. I see these few with Julie. It's hard for a human to read, but it's easy for a computer to read because new rows can just be added, and you're using Spotfire for your visualization anyways. So it doesn't really matter that this data is structured this way. So the other thing is that, like, when I go to a new year, I could just add a column for year. And now this is infinitely scalable. It doesn't matter if there's a new employee, there's a new year. I have everything I need right here. And this will just keep scaling with new rows. So you'll see that certain visualizations do require your data to be unpivoted. And so if you're having trouble with selecting your columns and stuff and your visualizations, you might need to unpivot it. I am actually going to show this step actually on second thought, because I think that there's another hang up I want to make sure I show you on. So I just Control C, Control V, pasted this into my dashboard. I'm going to hit OK. So I got weight, month, year, name, right? So if I go start from visualization, go table, this is how the table looks. Not very readable, but I could go into a cross table, which is going to, a cross table is kind of like a, it's a pivot table in Excel actually. But this cross table, I can say, okay, I got name here. And then on top, I have the weight. Maybe I want to have the month here, and I also want to have the year here. And in each cell, I want the weight. Now it's going to ask for an aggregation because you could have multiple readings for July and Julie. There could be multiple weigh-ins. In this example, I don't. So if I say average, it's going to be just whatever that one value is. And then you have the name here, right? So I guess in 2020, I didn't have any data for Megan, Roger, and Sam, but I had, and I didn't have 2020 for Julie. Maybe Julie was a new employee and these 3 employees left. But the point is, what this has done has taken my tall data on the left and made this into a wide data, into something that you can easily consume the way you would in Excel, but it's done it in Spotfire. Okay, so expressions are, let's see. So I talked a little bit about expressions earlier. The expression syntax, there is this cheat sheet. I'm going to put in the chat. There is a page of cheat sheets for expressions and all kinds of other things. But basically, this is, so in Excel, you have formulas. You grab certain cells and you do a formula that refers to specific cells. Now, expressions in Spotfire, again, are applied to entire columns. It doesn't need to be one column. It can be multiple columns, but it's going to look across the rows, and it's going to look across the columns, and it's going to create a whole calculated column. So that's how it does it to, again, be scalable. Now, the syntax is a little bit here. Your column name is going to be in square brackets, and Spotfire will color it green. It doesn't care about spaces. It doesn't care about the case. You can have uppercase, lowercase. Single quotes and double quotes are treated the same. Multiple lines are read as one, things like that. So let me just show you in more detail what I did earlier with this expression. So data, I did add calculated column earlier, okay? Now that created this column, calculation total revenue. Now it automatically recorded this as well. If I go to my data canvas, you'll see this little 1 here. That's my calculated column. It automatically recorded this. It has information. If I click on this, it'll show the expression. I'm just going to go to edit this calculated column. Remember, again, you can just go to data, add calculated column to bring this up. And just a kind of orientation of how this works. Now, this is a Spotfire expression language. It's not going to be exactly the same as Excel. There are some similarities, but you're going to have to learn the Spotfire expression language if you really want to get the full power out of it. Now, to help you with that, on the right, you have these, you basically have descriptions of what everything does. So you have all of these functions. There's things like text functions that are used for concatenating in Excel. If you want to concatenate cells, you use the little ampersand and you and symbol. And here it's you use a concatenate function and you use an open bracket, and then you type in your values that way, right? One of the things that was a little bit new to me, what Spotfire is, in Excel you use a lot of if else, and you can use if else in Spotfire, but it's better to use case when. And then the way that works is you just type in case, and then you say, let's say when price, sorry, phone is ringing. Oh, these robocallers. All right. Case when, let's say when the price is greater than, I don't know, 0.6, then I'm going to say hi. And I could say when, let's see, so I'm just going to actually do this. I'm going to copy this. When the price is less than or equal to 0.6 and price, see, I got autocomplete there, is greater than or equal to 0.4, then I'm going to say mid. And then otherwise, I'm going to say low. And then at the end, I'm going to put an end statement in there. Now I can hit preview, and I can see a preview of what's happening. If it's a price per pound, this is my output column. This is anything I've used in my input. Got high, mid, and lows, I'm sure, in there somewhere. There are properties also for your data tables. I'm not going to talk about that today. But then these are the columns, and I think that's a little self-explanatory. These are the columns that you can use. You're using your calculate column within one table. And I'm going to just call this, now I'm going to change this to grouping, and I'm going to hit OK. And I got that new expression here. I basically replaced my other expression, and now I see this grouping with high, and I think I actually filtered out a bunch of stuff. Here I'm going to clear some filters by hitting these X's. So I got high, mid, and I'm sure there's some low somewhere in here. Maybe they're all high and mid. So that's how the expression language works. So VBA and automation. So I'm just going to talk about this quickly. VBA, I use VBA a lot in Excel to automate certain tasks. I use it for calculations. I use it to pull data from databases. It's a general purpose language that you use for a lot of different things. Now with Spotfire, you're going to you might split this into two different areas. You might use Iron Python, which is the Python language, but different from using like Python for like data science. It's Iron Python works with the Spotfire API. And what that just basically means is it connects to the program, the Spotfire actual program, and can tell it to do certain things. It can tell it to change tables, to pull tables. So if you find yourself doing a lot of manual tasks with working with your data, you can write it in Iron Python and have it and do it for you. Now, when it comes to calculations, that's done with data functions, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But with Iron Python, this is kind of an overview of how it works. You have a document, your DXP is called your document, and you have a lot of, it's called the namespace, and this is a document model. So you can access your markings, you can access your filterings, you can access, that's all within the data manager. You can access a text area or tables or other charts, and that's within the visuals, which is within the pages. This is a sample. There's like thousands of these, but this is a sample of what Iron Python, the namespace is. And to show you kind of quickly how this can work, here I have turn on my layers. Okay. So I have different layers here, and I want a different configuration of these to show when I hit street detail, satellite, or live traffic here in Seattle, okay? So I don't want the user to have to select multiple of these. So let's say I hit satellite, it's going to change it to satellite, and it multi-selected only the ones I wanted. If I want live traffic, it's going to unselect certain ones and then select only one. So that's just an example of a shortcut I created, and I did it with Iron Python. So you go to File, Document Properties, and Scripts. If you're on Spotfire 10, you might see on File, and then it says Manage Scripts. And then you'll see here in this Iron Python script, this is the script that I wrote. I don't expect you to understand what all of this is, but I just want to show you that this is a script I wrote. We do have a video on how to use Iron Python, and I will also send you one of my favorite pages of Iron Python, which is scripting one. This has all kinds of examples. So if you're trying to automate things and you don't know what to, you can usually come and copy and paste things in here. So like setting a custom date format, embedding tables, write back to database, visualizations, configuring all color schemes. These are all automated actions that you can do. I'm going to just put this in the chat for you, and then we're going to move on to the data functions. All right, so advanced calculations. Now, there's something called data functions. In a data function, you can use Python, you can use R, you can use MATLAB, you can use KNIME, you can connect to like Azure and Google Cloud, AWS, and use their algorithms as well. So it's a really powerful capability. It's used more for computation than Iron Python is used more for controlling the application. Now, the data function is very dynamic. So it receives in a data table, a column, a property, and then you can subset that with the markings or the filters so that you have selected. You can just apply to the whole data table, the whole input data if you want. And then it'll write an output data. It'll write it out as a column to your original data table. It can write it to a property, which is a kind of global variable within Spotfire, or it can write it out to like a data table. So property, by the way, just going to throw this in. Property is go to File, Document Properties, and you go to Properties. You can add new variables and stuff in here, and those can be accessed from your expressions and data functions in Iron Python. So that's where you store variables in Spotfire. So an example of how a data function works, here I have, I'm going to just filter to, let's see, city. All right, so this is just a quick example of how this works. I'm going to go to Montreal. Now, let's say I have these pop-up clinics in Montreal, and or I have these patients, sorry, in Montreal. These are heart disease patients. I want to set up 7 pop-up clinics. I got 7 clinics. Where should I set up these clinics so that the patients don't have to travel too far, but they also are not overwhelming one office? So what I can do is I'm actually going to, let me get my lasso here. I'm going to select some data. And this is going to calculate Voronoi polygons, and these orange diamonds are the optimal places to put those clinics. So you can see they're all different shapes, and it's looked at 2 things here. It's looked at how many patients are there per area and how crowded is that office going to be. And it's telling you every patient that's within this polygon should go to this office. Everyone that's within this polygon should go to that office, et cetera. And if I wanted to maybe increase the number of polygons, I want to do 13 clinics, I can slide that. You'll see it's changing this. So it's all very dynamic. This is one of the more powerful things about Spotfire with advanced analytics. So this is in data and data function properties. You'll see that I have a script here. This is an R script that I've just put in. And you can also have, if you're using Spotfire 10.5 or above, you also have Python. So here's where you can do Python data science and statistics and calculations right in here. And then you also have some built-in areas here. You can actually save those to a library, and you can pin them to your sidebar here as well if you're in Spotfire 11.1 and above. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of R and Python and configuring that now, but I am going to point you to the Spotfire Enablement Hub, which has more videos on how to use Iron Python, how to use data functions. You'll see this in the active user. This is a whole kind of training program. There's lots of detailed content here. There's Iron Python basics, and then there's a Python R and data functions right there. So this is our last topic, and sharing. Okay, first thing about sharing, we need to talk about the different roles there are in Spotfire. So you have an analyst, you have a business author, and you have a consumer. A consumer can only access Spotfire dashboards on the web, and they can interact with them. That's it. They can't edit anything. They can't create anything. They're just consuming. Business authors can access it only on the web, but they can do some light editing in the web interface. So it has some new web features turned on that they can edit the dashboard on the web. Analyst has a full desktop client that you've seen me use all throughout the session today. An analyst has access to everything. An analyst can edit in the web, they can consume in the web, but they can also use the desktop client to do the hardcore authoring and full capabilities. So an analyst has everything that a business author and consumer has. A business author has everything that a consumer has. Next, let's talk about three major components of the Spotfire environment. You have your desktop client that I've been using today. You have on the other end of the spectrum, you got the web browsers and the mobile devices people are consuming it on. In the middle, you have a Spotfire server. Now, there's more components to a Spotfire server. So if you're an administrator and you're watching this, just know that this is very simplified. But if you're an author, for all intents and purposes, you can just think of the Spotfire server as one thing. Now, if you're an analyst, you can take your DXP from your desktop and you can put it on your Spotfire server. It's saved into the library. And then once it's saved to a library, if people have access to that library folder, then they can view this dashboard. If you're a business author, you're starting from the web. You put it on your Spotfire library, and then voila, it's available to others from the library. So the library is your sharing place. And then consumers, they can only read, right? The administrator, your administrator is responsible for all of this. You might have different administrators that focus on different components, but you should have an administrator that is governing your Spotfire server. If you're on the cloud, this end of the spectrum, the web side and the server is managed by TIBCO for the customers. So that is the last slide. Let me just show you in the menu how you share. Okay, so I have these honey production things, right? Before I share it to my library, this is set to always new data, which means it's reaching out to my dashboard, or not my dashboard, my spreadsheet, and it's always looking for new data. And so if I put this on my library and my Spotfire server it's not going to have permission to go reach into my computer and access the spreadsheet. What if my computer is off? It's not going to be able to do it. If my computer is off, it's not, for security reasons, it's not going to be reaching into computers and doing that stuff. So since I have a spreadsheet here, I'm actually going to store the data in the dashboard. So this is going to increase the size of the DXP file because the data and the visualizations are stored in there. But it means I can now email this to other people. I can save it in my library. Everyone's going to have access to it. If you wanted to automatically update whenever you open this dashboard, you can do new data when possible, and it will store it, but it'll also check for updates. One thing I didn't discuss is that you do have connectors if you want to connect to different databases, and you can store the data in the dashboard as well. Or if your Spotfire server has access to these databases, you don't have to store the data in the dashboard. In that situation, the Spotfire server can reach to a governed data source. All right, So I said store the data in the dashboard, and now I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to save as, and I'm going to save it as a library item. And I'm going to go to this folder, and I'm going to say, okay, Dr. Spotfire demo, March 2021. Okay. I'm actually going to give you guys this link so that you can try it yourself. I'm going to hit finish. And now it's saving. If you want to open in the web, this is the link you want. Okay. So I'm going to click this. So yeah, that's actually going to wrap it up for today. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. Be sure to check out our session next time with Jonathan Henderson. And next time, Jonathan Henderson will be showing how to go from scratch to a full dashboard, and really the thought processes and how to make something really beautiful, really easy to use, and very useful. All right, thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye.